Why, hello. We're doing something a little bit different today. So, today I find myself on a 1 to 2 hour walking adventure because I have a sick, toothy baby, and the only thing that makes her feel better is being outside. So, we are walking quite some ways. This will be probably the only time I'm able to film today. And I would like to film my silly little YouTube show. So we're going to try to film this as I'm walking, and I'm hoping, because it's Super Bowl Sunday, there will be less people out on the trail, so it's less embarrassing to do this. So I thought I'd tell you about all the books I read in January. There's going to be like lighting changes, I'm sure, because I have to go back and forth with my notes app, because all my notes are on my phone. And my phone is also my camera, because I'm not a real YouTuber. Amateur hour. How many books did I read? I think I read 6, 7. Let's look. 7. The first one was The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox. Maggie Knox is not a single author. Maggie Knox is a writing duo, kind of like Christina Lauren. This was a holiday romance. They said in the back of the book that they were trying to make it feel like a Hallmark movie. And it definitely has that feel, 100%. Oh God, there's people. So it starts with a nice, unbelievable premise, which is there's 2 twin sisters. They're both bakers. One is working on a baking show in LA. And the other one is still in their hometown, small town, Stardew Valley town in the middle of nowhere. And obviously it's like 12 days to Christmas. The one who's working on the TV show has a frying pan related accident and receives a fairly strong concussion, and it knocks out her sense of taste and smell. She's ultra competitive with her co-host on this baking show, who's kind of a douche, and she's trying to earn a job for a solo hosting baking show, so she doesn't want to miss her opportunity. So she of course calls her twin sister and is like, hey, you're a baker, I'm a baker, can we swap for like 12 days? You shoot the show, I'll run the bakery and do all this Christmassy baking for you, and you can host the show, and then I'll get the job, the bakery will be fine, and everything will be great. So they do. And of course it's completely unbelievable, but it's a Hallmark movie. You know, unbelievable plot aside, it was fine. There was some unbelievable cooking and baking relating things as well. Like at one point she makes a gingerbread croquembouche, which is not a croquembouche. Croquembouche is cream puffs. If you make a gingerbread croquembouche, you made a gingerbread tree. And the other one is they were putting wine corks with octopus, which is an old wives' tale. There's just a bunch of cooking and baking things in there that make like no sense, and they're not really a thing, but whatever. Fine. My biggest problem with this book is that it's a terrible look for brain injuries. And you don't know this, but I worked as a neuro ICU nurse for quite some time. I have a good working knowledge of brain injuries. Terrible look. At one point, one of the characters has the opportunity to fess up about the switch to her love interest, or the alternative is to make him believe that she's suffering a much more devastating brain injury than a light concussion, and she goes with, I have a much more devastating brain injury. And it's dumb. Is it fun? Yes. Is it fine? Yes. I don't think it's a, amazing out of this world Christmas romance. If you're looking for a holiday romance, I would recommend Kiss Her Once for Me, because that one is by far the best Christmas romance I've read. I don't know why I read this after Christmas. I was in the mood. It was just a solid find. Next was Yearbook by Seth Rogan. This is a memoir by the Canadian comedian Seth Rogan. And I think pretty much what you're going to experience is you'll enjoy this book as much as you enjoy Seth Rogen's sense of humor, which for me is a medium amount. So I enjoyed this book a medium amount. He does have some funny stories about various celebrities. I enjoyed him talking about how unhinged Tom Cruise is, and who's the guy who collected the heads? Nicolas Cage, and his various experiences with Nicolas Cage. Those were really funny. I read this on audiobook. I would recommend reading it on audiobook because he has all his friends narrate it, which is kind of great. So if he tells a funny story about Snoop Dogg or Sacha Baron Cohen, he has them read the words that he has written, which is just kind of a good time for a memoir. In particular, I enjoyed his stories talking about the Sony hacking by North Korea for his movie The Interview and his experiences with being targeted by North Korea. That was actually genuinely interesting. But for the most part, it was fun, it was fine, it was a nice memoir. Also, he really loves drugs. So he talks a lot about how much he really loves drugs. Oh God, it's so much more crowded than I thought it was going to be. I'm turning around. We're going to walk somewhere hopefully a little less crowded. Next, I read Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I actually read this as a buddy read with Alex from Alex Black Reads and Jess from This Kiwi. Jess does not have too many subscribers on BookTube. I think she's in the 20s, so you know, if Little BookTube could show her channel a bunch of love, that would be great, because she posts really awesome book reviews and was a super pleasant person. And I very much enjoyed our buddy read together. I already liked Alex, so, and she has more subscribers than me, so I think she'll be fine. I really didn't know much about the book Piranesi, other than it is featured always on like Greek myth, Greek retelling book lists by other booktubers. I know a lot of people like it. I knew it was about a maze, like a labyrinth of some kind, and I knew that the character on the cover is not Piranesi. But other than that, I didn't really know too much about it. And I think that's kind of how you should go into it. I think part of the story experience is not knowing anything about it and being pleasantly confused as you're dropped into this world, as it sort of just unspools around you. The story is told from the point of view of Piranesi, who's our main character, who lives in this enormous house. And house is sort of underselling it. Like, it's basically this giant, almost temple-like structure. It's filled with like endless halls. Everything is, you know, this sort of like white marble kind of material. And in some of the levels of the house, the ocean runs through it. So there's periodically like tides that run through the house. And there's something about how the author just describes the scene that made me feel like I've been there in this strange way. Like, I think Jessica said she dreamed about labyrinths after reading this book. Well, I kept daydreaming, catching myself feeling like I was standing in this great white hall with the ocean at my feet. There's something about it that's just really captivating. You really are just thrown into it. You don't know what's going on. And for the first couple of chapters, she just really focuses on description with no plot. So I know Alex struggled with that a little bit, but if you hang in there, the plot really does start to pick up after a couple of chapters. If you can stick with it, there's a lot of diary style entries, which is kind of fun as he starts to figure out who he is and where he is and why he's there. This reminded me of two books for two different reasons. One, this reminded me of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle in the way that the story unfolds. It's plotted similarly. You're just really tossed into the world with very little idea of what's going on, and the plot payoffs as you unravel the mystery are really good. It was fun to read this as a buddy read. I think we were all sort of spinning some wild theories as we were trying to figure out what was going on. And then it kind of reminded me of Erin Morgenstern's writing, specifically the Starless Sea. Susanna Clark's writing is definitely different. I would say it's like less flowery than Erin Morgenstern's. But I think if you enjoy that kind of world building through description, you might enjoy Piranesi as well. And if you enjoyed Piranesi and haven't read any of Erin Morgenstern's writing, you might enjoy The Starless Sea or The Night Circus. I ended up giving this like a high 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed the plot payoffs, even though it was a little slow in the beginning. But it was just one of those books I always kind of wanted to keep picking up. I want to know why we were here, know who we are, and what's gonna happen. I think we're gonna off-road it. We're gonna go up some trails because it's too busy on this particular public trail, because it turns out there's a bunch of people like me who don't really care about the Super Bowl. They're all out here too. Hiking uphill, hard, hiking hard. Okay. Struggle. Oh, now the little rugrat's asleep. So I guess we'll keep walking for another hour till she wakes up. It's fine, everything's fine. Parenting's fun all the time. We're now off the trail, so hopefully it'll be a little bit more chill. Next, I read The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. Fforde. No one knows how to say his name. I can't be bothered to look it up. Leave me alone. This was actually his debut novel, which I didn't know until after I'd read it. And I think that actually explains why all the other books I read from him, I gave like a solid 5 stars to add to favorite shelf kind of designation. And this one I thought was more of a 4-star read. Like, it was really good, but I just didn't always catch myself reaching for it all the time. Like, it was a little slow, some random places it wandered off to, plot-wise. It was just less of a have to keep picking it up book for me. Basically, it follows Thursday Next, who is a literary detective. In this particular book, she is trying to track down Hades. Now, Hades is messing with the original manuscript of Jane Eyre, hence the Eyre Affair. Something that didn't occur to me until after I had finished the book was that it was titled for the novel it was talking about. Very luckily, I had read Jane Eyre last year, very recently, like in October. It was my Victober read. You don't have to read Jane Eyre to enjoy this, but it definitely like helps a bit to know more about the story. But basically, Thursday Next needs to save Jane Eyre with a little help from Mr. Rochester. It was fun, it was funny, it was quippy. The plot sort of ran away from itself a couple of times, and I just didn't find myself reaching for it in the same way that I've reached for a lot of his other books. I will probably continue with the series though, because it is a lot of fun, and he wrote a bunch of them. But I am very excited, probably more so, that he has finally written a second book in the Shades of Grey series. The first book was published in 2009, so we are very, very jazzed that the sequel is coming out later this year. So I would give this like a solid 4 stars. Next was Heroes by Stephen Fry. I read this on audiobook. I've had it forever. It is not really a retelling of Greek myths. It's just like the Greek myths themselves distilled into their most manageable, entertaining points. So if you want to learn about Greek mythology, his books are a great place to start. I read the first one called Mythos, which is just kind of like general Greek mythology. This one is heroes, so obviously it focuses on the classic Greek heroes like Hercules, Jason, etc. I also had a hard time reading this one. I think I just wasn't in the mood. I think that I tried to read a lot of books this month, which were on my TBR shelf. And I think I was fighting the mood reader in me. I felt like I just didn't want to read these books, despite the fact that it was hard for me to pick up. I think it was just like my headspace. Like, I just didn't really want to read semi-dense but very entertaining Greek myths. I will say some of my favorite things were like the labors of Hercules, because I didn't really know the stories. So those were the ones I enjoyed the most, was if I didn't fully know the story, if I knew the story partially. For example, the labors of Hercules are basically because of Hera. Hera's all mad that Zeus banged another mortal lady, and wham bam, got her Hercules. And she's mad about it, so she decides to essentially curse him, where he sees a dragon and 2 demons in his home, and so he's, Greek hero, slays them, right? But it turns out that was just a hallucination, and he kills his wife and 2 children. So it's very sad. To atone for this terrible blood crime, he has to do the labors, which is to perform these impossible tasks to cleanse his soul. Not very Disney. I enjoyed that some of the labors are very like kind of unheroic. Like, some of them are like, yeah, slay the Hydra. And then some of them are like, here's some ancient cow stables with immortal cows and centuries of cow shit that hasn't been mucked out. You have to clean the stable in a day. Like, who knew cleaning cow shit was like heroic? But it is. Camera and lighting change. Baby girl is napping, so we're gonna see if we can go inside. Someone immediately woke up, and now we're just playing around until we're ready for another nap, right? But like I was saying with Heroes, it was fun. I did enjoy getting to learn more about the myths that I didn't otherwise know. My personal favorite labor of Hercules is when he has to go get Cerberus from the underworld, which is great because he basically just marches into the underworld, goes up to Hades and is like, yo, can I borrow Cerberus? And Hades is like, no, that's my favorite pup. You cannot have him. And Hercules is like, but it will piss off Hera. And Hades is like, oh, yes, go ahead. Perfectly fine with this. But you do have to go fight him yourself because he's his own pooch, but no weapons, because if you hurt him, I will smite you. He is my favorite pup. So Hercules goes and wrestles Cerberus until Cerberus gets really tired. And when Cerberus can't like get up anymore, Hercules is like, okay, dearest underworld pup, I'm so sorry. I have to borrow you for a minute. You seem really tired, so I'm gonna carry you. And if that's not the most adorable of Hercules' labors, I don't know what is. It's a solid 4 to 5 star read. I just wasn't really in the headspace for it, but I am very happy I got it off my TBR shelf. And Heroes and Piranesi were both on my like yearly book goals of books I wanted to read, so I am pretty happy I finished both of them. Welcome as we continue on to the many facets of my home and surrounding outdoor areas and suboptimal lighting conditions. There's only 2 more, so I think we can get it done. Dublin, you want to come up here? Give the people the doggie. No, they don't? You good boy. This is Dublin. He's a retired racing greyhound. He sleeps 20 some odd hours a day. So you don't see him much on my videos because he's usually napping adjacent to the camera. You wanna lay down? He's really cute. Next, I read Autumn by Alison Smith. This is book 1 in her Seasons quartet. Also didn't really know much about this book other than it's gotten a lot of buzz. I think it's gotten some awards or shortlisted for some awards. It's just a really weird writery book. It's got this kind of arty, poetic, stream of consciousness style of writing where it just kind of explores really 2 main characters and their interactions throughout their lives, but also their lives on a whole and their tangential relationships with other people. It really, really reminded me of Sheila Heti's writing. Last year I read Pure Color by Sheila Heti. There was something about the way this book was written in the sense that it's quite short. It has this extremely specific writing style that, to be totally honest with you, didn't really capture me. I feel like with books like this, you need to really click with the writing in order to get into it because the writing style is the main part of the book. The plot does not really drive forward. It's more of a character study. And my problem was I didn't really care about the 2 main characters. And because I didn't really care about the 2 main characters, the only thing that was left to hook me was the writing. And it just didn't make me want to pick it up. It made me want to put it down, to be honest. I did enjoy it for the first few chapters, and then the sort of floaty plotlessness sort of style just got to me after a while, and I was like, I just don't care. But that's just my opinion. A lot of booktube people have reviewed this extremely highly, and what I am learning is that whilst I am a basic B, it turns out I don't love a lot of really highly rated books on booktube. Who knew? I did feel extremely redeemed by comparing it to Sheila Heti's writing. That comparison occurred to me very early in the book, and the main thing you have to know about Pure Color by Sheila Heti is at one point the main character becomes stuck in a leaf and then just continues to write the story being stuck in a leaf. And at one point in this book, one of the 2 main characters becomes stuck in a tree, and I was like, ha! I knew it! This definitely had more humorous aspects. Some of the parts I enjoyed the best were kind of like funny interactions in mundane life that you have with other people. And I enjoyed that. It definitely had political things it was trying to say. Like this book was trying to make some huge points about Brexit, because I think this was written probably close to when it was happening. It just wasn't truly for me. I do have the second book on my shelf. It's on my TBR shelf. It's the Winter book. I have heard the first book by far and away most people enjoy the most, and then they enjoy the sequels less and less. They're short enough where I might just read the second one to see if I'm the opposite of that and see if I enjoy them more and if there's any real benefit for me continuing in the quartet. I don't know. Like, it is not for me. And it's sort of hard to rate books like this because I can objectively say the writing is wonderful. Like, it's extremely poetic, it's extremely well written, but it is not a book that I found enjoyable, and my ratings for books tend to be just what was my enjoyment. I think I gave this like 3 stars, and the reality is it's not poorly written in any way. It was just not enjoyable for me. Honestly, I should have probably rated it lower, but I tend to be a pretty generous reviewer of books, but it wasn't for me. The last book I read was A Little Something Different by Sandy Hall, and I picked this up mostly because one of my favorite small booktubers, Amy's Rambles, recently made an awesome list of like some of her favorite romances. I jive pretty well with a lot of her taste in books, so I added a bunch to the TBR, and I was able to find this on one of my library audiobook rentals. I had a couple days left in January, so I thought, why not? Let's just do this thing. And I'm so happy I did, because I would say this month was a pretty mediocre reading month for me. The books I read were not, bad. They just weren't as enjoyable for me as I was anticipating, and I was just kind of feeling a bit blah with my start to the year. This was, as the title says, A Little Something Different. It's basically a book that's kind of written from a sort of interesting writing prompt. You know when you're in creative writing classes and they give you like a fun prompt? This felt like a book that started with this fun prompt. 2 very introverted, quiet college students who sort of fall for each other but have a really hard time expressing their feelings for each other. And the fun prompt is, what if you wrote a romance of 2 people falling in love, but you never wrote it from the main characters' perspectives? What would that look like? And in this particular book, they went with kind of quirky and fun, and they took everybody's perspectives in the mundane in-between. So the narrators are from a lot of fun perspectives. There's one from their college creative writing professor's perspective. There's a bus driver. There's a squirrel. There's a park bench. To be totally honest, though, I really enjoyed the perspectives of people who were not rooting for the characters to fall in love. There's a student in their creative writing class who just hates the both of them and is just endlessly complaining about how can't they just like figure it out and get a rumor ready because he's so irritated by them both. Those are the funniest to me. Is it cutesy? Absolutely. Were sometimes the characters in here a tad underbaked and tropey? Yes. In particular, there is a fellow student in the creative writing class who's sort of supposed to be a Richie Rich mean girl, heel for the main character's relationship developing. And I found her so cartoonish and so unlike a real person. It irritated me whenever I had to hear from her. Do I really care about that? No, I don't. It was just a good time. It was just a 5-star enjoyable read for me. I didn't care that sometimes I was like, why can't these 2 people get together? It's a little bit weird that they can't just communicate even a little bit. It's the kind of thing where like, are chocolate chip cookies a high-end dessert? No. Okay. Are they satisfying? Yes. Yes, they are. You're not gonna get served that as your main dessert in a high-end restaurant, but you will enjoy the hell out of it if you bake it at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was good. It was fun. It was funny. I think more people should read this, especially if you like kind of wholesome romance stories. This is pretty much devoid of smut, but it is really cute, and I really enjoyed it. So while it was a little bit of a disappointing reading month for me, where a lot of the books just kind of felt blah and meh, it was actually fairly productive. I read 3 books from my TBR shelf: Piranesi, Yearbook, and Autumn. So I met my monthly goal of trying to read 3 to 4 books from my TBR shelf, from my physical TBR shelf. Piranesi and Heroes were both from my yearly book goals, like books that have been marinating on my shelf so long that I just want to get them out of the way. So it was actually a pretty productive reading month. Because I was out walking, I didn't get a chance to read some of the quotes from these books, so I'm going to put some of them in here now just so you can get kind of a sense of the writing of some of the books. If I don't have quotes from the books, you can just assume that I was too lazy to get quotes or I read it on audiobook. From Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I realize that the search for the knowledge has encouraged us to think of the house as if it were a sort of riddle to be unveiled, a text to be interpreted, and that if we discover the knowledge, then it will be as if the value has been wrested from the house, and all that remains will be mere scenery. The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. Don't ever call me mad, Mycroft. I'm not mad. I'm just, well, differently moral, that's all. Some things are more important than rules and regulations. Governments and fashions come and go, but Jane Eyre is for all time. From Autumn by Ali Smith. This isn't fiction, the man says. This is the post office. She looked back at what she'd actually written down. Art like this examines and makes possible a reassessment of the outer appearances of things. She laughed. She took her pencil, rubbed out the capital A with the rubber on its tip, and the lowercase word art, then added a completely new word at the front of the sentence. So the sentence began, Arty Art, from The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox. And it didn't hurt that, according to Sasha, Austin looked like a young Rob Lowe, with his impossibly perfect hair, chiseled jaw, and blue eyes with lashes for days. Austin became the salty half of the duo, and it wasn't long before things went south on set between the co-hosts. So I hope you enjoyed my sort of literally ambling and rambling book reviews. I'm doing my best to make videos. It's definitely a little bit harder right now. I will try to keep making videos as often as I can. I do hope it becomes a bit easier in the next 6 months, but right now I'm just doing my best. Thanks to everyone who always leaves comments on my videos, and a couple of channels who recently shouted me out, which was very kind. In particular, Dia at Novel Idea, who mentioned me in her shoutouts video. It's very sweet of her. I will link all the channels that I mentioned below. As always, check out their videos. There's some awesome small creators floating around here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And as always, I will see you all next video. Hopefully not too long. Bye.